In 1972, the Old Christians Club organized a trip for their rugby team, booking a Uruguayan Air Force plane to take them from Montevideo, Uruguay to Santiago, Chile. Departing from Carrasco International Airport on October 12th, the twin-engine Fairchild turboprop carried 5 crew members and 40 passengers, including club members, friends, family, and others who chipped in to cover the plane's expenses. But due to unfavorable weather conditions in the mountains, they had to spend the night in Mendoza, Argentina, before finally taking off around 2:18 p.m. the next day. And for many of them, this would be their last day alive. Welcome to Lucky Life. Today we are talking about Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, a routine flight for a rugby team that turned into a nightmare. Trapped in a desolate valley, battered by freezing temperatures and dwindling supplies, they faced a choice no one should ever have to make: resort to cannibalism or succumb to starvation. Yet, against all odds, they found the strength to endure, driven by a relentless will to survive. But how did they defy death in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth? Well, let's get started. Although Santiago was their destination west of Mendoza, the Fairchild aircraft was designed to fly at most 22,500 feet. So the pilots decided to head south towards the pass of Planchon, where they could safely navigate through the Andes. About an hour after takeoff, the pilot informed air controllers that they were flying over the pass. Later, he radioed that they had reached Curacao, Chile, and begun heading north. However, the pilot had miscalculated their position, still within the Andes. Unaware of the error, controllers instructed them to start descending for landing, and communication was lost soon after. Around 3:30 p.m. on October 13th, tragedy struck. The aircraft collided with a mountain, losing both its right and left wings before crashing into a remote valley near the Chilean border in Argentina. The plane's front section then slid down the mountain before coming to rest in a valley at an altitude of approximately 11,500 feet. Search efforts began, but it became apparent that the reported location needed to be corrected. The focus shifted to the Andes, though spotting the white plane amidst the snow-covered mountains proved challenging. The harsh conditions led many to believe there would be no survivors. After 8 days, the official search was called off, though family members continued to pursue rescue efforts. The initial crash claimed the lives of 12 individuals, with several of the 33 surviving passengers sustaining injuries. Tragically, 5 more perished during the first night, and 1 more passed away a week later, leaving 27 survivors. Holding on to hope for rescue, they endured freezing temperatures by fashioning a shelter from the plane's wreckage and rationing the limited food and wine they could scavenge from the luggage, which eventually ran out after about a week. Despite spotting rescue planes overhead in the days following the crash, none managed to locate the white plane amidst the snowy terrain. Around the 10th day, the survivors stumbled upon a small transistor radio from the wreckage, only to hear the heartbreaking news that the search had been called off and they were presumed dead. Learning about the search's end left Canessa feeling detached from the world, and he recalls that it was a surreal feeling to be alive while being considered dead. But it also forced them to accept reality. Rescue wasn't coming. It was up to them to survive. As weeks passed and hunger gnawed at them, the survivors faced a grim decision: resort to cannibalism or succumb to starvation. Although consuming the deceased was degrading, Canessa found motivation in the thought of reuniting with his mother. For him, it was a moral dilemma. You're consuming a friend's remains and questioning your actions. But witnessing a mother's grief spurred him on. Having a purpose gives you strength. On the 18th day, tragedy struck as an avalanche nearly buried the fuselage, claiming the lives of 8 more individuals. Emerging from the snowbound wreckage, the survivors encountered yet another obstacle: a blizzard. After weathering it out, they began plotting their escape. This devastating event strengthened the resolve of the remaining survivors, pushing them to venture out across the mountains, hoping to find help. It was a daunting task. None of them were experienced mountaineers, and they were all severely weakened and needed more appropriate clothing or gear. But with no other options, they improvised, crafting a makeshift sledge, sewing together materials for a sleeping bag, and selecting the fittest among them for the journey ahead. After weeks of preparation and failed attempts, a small group of initially 3, then 2 individuals to conserve resources set out towards the west, aiming for Chile. Battling against freezing temperatures and debilitating altitude sickness, they ascended a nearby peak, standing at a staggering 15,000 feet, to survey their surroundings. They saw little but more mountains and a valley that wound through them. "We have been through so much," one of the climbers, Roberto Canessa, said to Parado, the other. "Now let's go die together." With desperation and uncertainty gnawing at them, they cautiously descended the mountain's other side and began trudging along a glacier below, pushing themselves forward despite growing weakness. On December 18th, their perseverance led them to the sound of rushing water, the mouth of a river. Following its course, they encountered signs of human presence, including a rusted soup can, a horseshoe, and even a herd of cows. Then, on the evening of December 20th, their hopes were reignited as they spotted a man on horseback across the riverbank. The next day, 3 more individuals joined them. Parado, struggling to communicate over the roaring river, attempted to convey their situation by miming a plane crash. He worried they'd misunderstand or dismiss him. To his relief, one of the men across the river tied a note to a rock and tossed it over, asking what they needed. Trembling, Parado wrote, "I come from a plane that fell into the mountains." He explained that he and Canessa were weak and starving, that 14 friends remained on the plane, and that they needed help desperately soon. "When are you going to come fetch us? Please, we can't even walk. Where are we?" Summoning his last ounce of strength, he flung the rock across the river, hoping they'd understand. Later that morning, a man on horseback approached their side of the river, leading them to a hut where they received warm meals. Soon after, Chilean mounted police and reporters arrived, followed by rescue helicopters. Despite doubts about Parado's story, they set out searching for the plane. The helicopters battled violent turbulence as they ascended the mountain. Passing over the peak, fierce winds pushed them back, disorienting Parado. Fear gripped him as he worried about finding his comrades. Then, a glimmer of hope, black specks on the ice below. The helicopters landed, rescuing 6 survivors and deploying a team to aid the rest overnight. In a San Fernando, Chile hospital, Parado was finally relieved of his filthy clothes and given a warm shower. Gazing at his emaciated reflection in the mirror, he repeated 2 words to himself over and over: "I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive." So, how would you survive in the face of such adversity?